When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
American soccer fans, welcome to episode 195 of the USA Soccer Cast. We're bringing you everything about the U.S. national teams, the players, the leagues, and everything else that impacts the game of soccer in these United States. I'm Donald Wine. We continue our discussion of the breakdown of how the U.S. men's national team did at the 2026 World Cup. We, of course, have the final coming up on Sunday between Spain and Argentina. Should be a good match. We also have France and England in the third place game on Saturday. We will talk about those later, after the weekend is done, and we can fully process what happened at the final and the third place game, along with just the legacy of this World Cup. But I want to start by doing a very thorough breakdown of every single player on the men's national team roster and how they did at the World Cup. We'll talk about Pochettino in a later episode. We'll talk about everything else with regards to supporting local and figuring out where we go from here after the World Cup is done. But I do want to really talk about the players one by one. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it by position groups. We're going to go through each player in those position groups. We'll talk about the goalkeepers, the defenders. We'll take a break, and then we'll talk about the midfielders and the forwards. And really, for some, obviously, won't have a lot to say about them because they didn't play as much. And then there's some where there will be a nice little thorough conversation. But let's start with the goalkeepers. And you have to start with the guy who started 4 games, and that's Matt Freese. Matt Freese, I thought, had a really good World Cup for the first part, right? He had a clean sheet against Australia. He had the clean sheet against Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially when we were down to 10 men. And we've talked about the aspects around Florian Balogun's red card, but they had to play 36 minutes down to 10 men. And not only did he keep the clean sheet, we were able to extend the lead in the process. So those were good. But the Belgium game is funny. It almost in a way, neutralized everything good he had done up to that point. He had only allowed 1 goal. He allowed a goal against Paraguay, and that really wasn't his fault. We look back at that game, and it's still a 4-1 victory, and he played well, considering, and I thought the defense really helped him in that game. But against Belgium, it came apart for him. He was, in my mind, directly responsible for the first goal, not coming out of his box and trying to intercept the cross, and that allowed, if he had got out there and maybe gotten a hand on it or punched it away or kicked it away or something like that, maybe that goal doesn't go in and they, are able to proceed with 0-0. And then you also have the third goal, and you don't need to rehash it, but that's an epic boggle for him, and I know he wants that back. You can even argue that he was a little bit out of position on the Lukaku goal that made it 4-1 at the end, but at that point, the game was over. It was really that third goal that wasn't the backbreaker, but it was, in essence, what really ended it for the United States. Overall, you have to figure that Matt Freese, he's took that position from Matt Turner, who had the other start, and we'll talk about him in a second, but he didn't really do much leading up to the World Cup to really solidify himself as the number one. It was mainly other guys who were thrust into opportunities that didn't take advantage. But Matt Freese has to take a next step. And whether it's him, whether it's someone else, the goalkeeping core as a whole has to take a big next step to get back to where it was a decade ago, 15 years ago, where the goalkeeping position was arguably the best position group of the men's national team program. We don't have that right now. We have a lot of guys who are trying to get into some sort of consistency, but Matt Freese needs to take the next step and hit another level, maybe another two levels with his game because you need a goalkeeper that's going to get hot. You're going to need a goalkeeper that can be consistent, and we didn't necessarily have that at the World Cup. It didn't hurt us until it did. It hurt us when we played Belgium and we didn't have somebody who was standing on all ends and breakdancing in front of the goal to make stops, but also about commanding the defense and getting the ball cleared out of our defensive third. He wasn't great in that regard, and there's a lot of work to be done with him and with the goalkeepers. But all in all, I mean, look, you get two clean sheets at the World Cup. That's a great thing, and you have to do the positive. But the negative is that Belgium game, he made some mistakes, and overall, he needs to get a little bit better. Matt Turner, again, had the other start. We'll talk about him. He had the start against Turkey. They let in 3 goals. Don't necessarily think it was really his fault, but what hurt him, because he was the number one in 2022, he was the number one at Copa America. And what really got him off of his game was his lack of consistent minutes at the club level. That turned into a reduction in sharpness on the international level. And that's where a goalkeeper can lose their spot very, very quickly. I really wonder what's next for him. Obviously, he's going to stay at the New England Revolution. That will give him some opportunity to become more consistent, obviously play every single week, but he also has to take it up a gear. He's on the other side of 30 now, and he probably wants to be around for the next World Cup, but he's going to have to figure out how to be a starter, have to figure out how to supplant Freeze, and also, be a guy who can take a job and keep it. That's the question for him and the other goalkeepers because, again, on the other side of 30, there's other guys who are trying to creep into the mix. And over the next 4 years, who knows what could happen with this goalkeeping core. But Matt Turner also needs to improve his sharpness, improve his shot stopping, which was great for years, but has lapsed because of the fact that he has had some troubles on the club level of recently. We then go to Chris Brady, and we don't have to say much about Chris Brady except he's viewed as one of the future guys of the goalkeeping core. He didn't play in any of these matches. He was the third goalkeeper. You're not expecting him to play, but for a guy that's young, right, 22, 23 years old, it's nice that he got at least some experience. And the hope is that he can take that and blossom, not just at Chicago, but wherever he may go after that, because I feel like the future is bright for him. He wants to be the number one in 2030. I think they all do, but he has the inside track of being that next starting goalkeeper. But he has to continue to show improvement, continue to show that he can perform not just consistently at the club level at a high level, but on the international stage. Can he step up and make saves? Can he step up and command a defense? That's going to be the question for him moving forward. We move on to the defenders, and we start with Serginho Dest, who I thought had a brilliant World Cup up to the Belgium game. You're going to hear a lot about the Belgium game because I think the issue with that is that a lot of guys did not have a good match against the Red Devils. But you take that aside, I thought Serginho Dest looked great against Paraguay, against Australia. He was dynamic on the wing. He wasn't even really a wing back. They pushed him all the way up to the wing and let him cook up there, and cook he did for the first couple of matches. He had 4 starts. He had the 1 sub appearance against Turkey, and I thought he did well. We need him to be on his game. We need him. He was even tracking back on defense against Paraguay and Australia, which was very fun to see. But I think the world of him, and I think he's a guy that should factor into the next cycle and be one of our important guys. But he needs, again, take it up another level and be a guy that can consistently be a great defender as well as dynamic on offense. Because when he's playing two-way soccer, man, nobody can stop him. He's very, very good at that regard, and he helps our national team motor immensely when he does that. I think the guy out of the defensive core that had the best World Cup was Chris Richards. Chris Richards, 4 starts. There was talk, obviously, before the World Cup because of his late injury when he was with Crystal Palace about whether he'd even be ready to play. And ready he was. And he has solidified himself as the best center back on this team. He played well against Paraguay. He had a historic game, 83 passes, 83 completed. It's the highest 100% rate for any World Cup player since 1966. Not any U.S. player. Any player who has played in a World Cup since 1966, nobody completed more passes at a 100% rate in one game than Chris Richards did against Paraguay, 83 for 83. And he continued to play very, very well in almost every game that he played. He had four starts. The Belgium game, nobody, very few people had a good game in that regard. But again, the goals weren't really his fault. He was missing some passes, but I think he is the future of this goalkeeper or this defensive core, I should say. And he should be the guy that they build around. As long as his trajectory continues the way it has, he's going to be a guy that's going to be playing some big time games, both at the club level and at the international level. Really, really excited that he was able to be healthy enough to play in this World Cup because he had missed in 2022. And I'm really, really happy that he thrived on this stage. He's one of the guys that I think had the best World Cup of any of the guys on this men's national team. We move on to Jedi Robinson. Jedi, like Dest, I think he was very dynamic in the first couple of games on that left flank. He obviously playing more of a left wing back role as opposed to a left wing role. But I thought he did very, very well. Against Belgium, he didn't do as well. But I'm willing to overlook that in a way because, again, everybody had a bad game against Belgium. I think that his play against Australia and against Bosnia, even a little bit, was really, really good because we needed guys on the flanks to stop some of the other team's stars and the other team's most dangerous players. He was able to do the two-way soccer, but I think he was also very, very great at finding guys with passes. Again, jump starting the attack and being active and being aggressive. I think him and Dest on either side, on the flanks, are what this team needs. We need some guys to back them up. But I think Anthony Robinson didn't do anything to dispel the notion that he is indispensable. He's one of the guys on this team that we need in the lineup right now. We play much better with him in the lineup than with him not in the lineup. And I'm really, really excited and really happy by how he played. Austin Trusty is a guy who could factor into this competition for the center back role moving forward. He had one goal in his one start against Turkey. Great, great goal. Balls bouncing around the box. He put his foot through it and it goes in. You could see what that meant to him. He had one sub appearance as well. But I think against Turkey, despite the goal, I don't think really anybody had a terrific game. He kind of picked up a knock in that game. He didn't factor in much the rest of the way. But I think Austin Trusty is a guy who could factor in the trajectory that he's had, the career path that he's had coming from MLS to Celtic, a year ago. He wasn't really looked at as a guy that was going to make this team. He makes the World Cup roster. He plays, he scores a goal. You hope that he can take that back to Celtic or even somewhere else in a better league. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he continues to blossom in the coming years because he is a guy that could factor in to play alongside a Chris Richards in that middle for years to come. Miles Robinson didn't have a great World Cup. He had the one start against Turkey. Really, two of the three goals, especially, felt like it was on him, and it's unfortunate because he fought so hard, obviously, to make the World Cup. He missed the World Cup last time due to injury, and it was disappointing to see that he didn't get a lot of time, but also didn't make the most of that opportunity. Now he's going to be on the wrong side of 30 in 2030, and you're wondering if he's going to have what it takes to continue to stay in this core and be a guy that you can bring in off the bench or even, again, compete to start at the center back position. The next guy up is the captain, Tim Ream. And I want to start first off by just saying thank you to Tim Ream because he, over the last 6 years, has provided a service that we didn't think that we were going to get from him. And he had an importance to this team that nobody expected. I know he's getting up there. This is likely his last World Cup, and he knows it. And he all but expressed that he knew that his time on the national team was running short. But to be the captain of this team at a World Cup, to do what he did before 2022, coming on late to kind of be serviceable when other guys were out due to injury, and then earn a starting role and never get beaten out for it by other guys. I mean, he did great. Now, against Belgium, was he outmatched? Yes. Was he out physical? Yes. Were guys outrunning him? Yes. Were guys more athletic? Yes. But I think that was why that game felt like you needed somebody more than Tim Ream. And that's not Tim Ream's fault. Tim Ream did as much as he could, but he had limitations that were exposed against Belgium. But I think his leadership was there. I think he took that responsibility. He accepted it. He owned up to his faults. But at the end of the day, if you don't want Tim Ream in your lineup, you need somebody to supplant him. He's not just going to give away his spot. You need somebody to come take it. And nobody did. For 6 years, essentially, he was inked in at starter at center back. And it was a question of who was going to start alongside him to kind of complement him. But that's a testament to him and his work ethic and his determination to fight for this national team, to fight for this jersey. And so I appreciate him for that. I think the time will be now to start to move away from him. He'll probably have some sort of sign off where he gets to have a match to say goodbye. I'm not saying that's imminent or going to be coming this fall or anything, but there's going to be a point where we have to say goodbye to Tim Ream. But before we do, let's thank him for the service that he provided for this national team to carry us into, to help carry us into the 2022 World Cup, get us back after we failed in 2018, and then be able to serve the leadership role and the elder statesman role and the veteran role for this team throughout the last 4 years. That is something that is greatly appreciated. And even though it didn't work out for this World Cup, we should remember Tim Ream positively for his contributions to this national team. I think one guy whose stock improved tremendously is Alex Freeman. 4 starts, 1 sub role. He appeared in all 5 games, had the goal against Australia. Man, he did well. I thought he did super well in this World Cup. And yeah, again, against Belgium, not the best game. It was missing some passes, and it was weird that what he had been doing before that was completely opposite for Belgium. But man, he had a great, great tournament, and I think his stock is rising because of that. He's a guy that you can build around on the defensive unit, and I think he played his way into the conversation of being a guy that you kind of build your team around on the defensive end. Alongside of Chris Richards, he can obviously play center back. He can play on the outside of that 3-back role, 3-back formation. But it was great to see him take the next step and jump to another level at this World Cup. I hope that continues for him. Next up is Max Arston. Only had the 1 sub appearance against Belgium. Didn't really factor in too much. He's a guy that obviously that Pochettino really likes, and if Pochettino sticks around, we're going to see more of Max Arston. But I want to see his game, again, continue to elevate because we need him to take a leap as well if he's going to be a guy that we can count on in this next cycle of which, again, World Cup qualifying, guys like Max Arston are going to be needed. So while he didn't appear much in this World Cup, hopefully this is motivation and also an experience he can take for the next 4 years and really become an integral part of this team and even part of the lineup. Mark McKenzie only had 1 start. He started against Turkey. He was hurt for that Bosnia game and didn't appear in the team sheet for that, but did not have the best World Cup, did not have the best game against Turkey. And again, he's a guy that you would think could factor into the competition for center back, but he needs to figure out how to elevate his game somewhat. I really like Mark McKenzie. I think he's a great guy, great person, and I think he's a great player. In the French league, he's going to hopefully be able to continue to improve, and I think that he's a guy that we'll see over the next 4 years. But he needs to figure out a way to get his name out there and make it be more known than it is right now through how he plays on the club level and once he gets to the national team, how he translates his club game to the international level. That's the question for him for the next 4 years. And then finally, for the defenders, we have Joe Scally. He had one start, he had one sub appearance, didn't really play much, didn't really factor in much into this tournament. And he's the guy that was a tweener. He was one of those guys on the on the bubble, as you will, when it comes to making this team. And he has to figure out a way to continue to elevate his game to be better because he's got to supplant a bunch of guys ahead of him, in my mind, to be a guy that routinely starts on the national team. But he's not there yet. And I think he continues to get better for his club and continues to have good showings on the national team level against top quality opponents, whether they're friendlies or whether it's, competition. We want him to be a part of this group, but to do that, he's going to have to consistently show that he belongs there. And at times he disappears, at least in my mind, when he gets on the field in a national team uniform. Didn't really see much of him at this World Cup. Hopefully this, again, is an experience that he can use to continue to build. It's now been to 2 World Cups. Can he build off of this and continue to grow as a player as he enters the prime of his career? That was the goalkeepers. That was the defenders. We're now going to take a quick break. On the other side, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the rest of the roster, the midfielders and the forwards, coming up after this. Hey everyone, are you looking for the latest gear for your U.S. national teams, Major League Soccer, the NWSL, or any other team in the world of soccer? The USA Soccercast has affiliate partnerships that are ready to help you out. Head to linktree.com/USA Soccercast, where we have links to Homage, Fanatics, the MLS Store, and Breaking Team. You can get the jersey, shirt, hat, or accessory you're looking for to support your team, while also saving some money and helping this show in the process. Again, linktree.com/USA Soccercast. Click on the links and get your gear. And we thank you as always for your support of the show. We are back and we continue our discussion of every player on the U.S. men's national team's World Cup roster. We have talked about the goalkeepers. We've talked about the defenders. Let's move to the midfielders. And we start with Tyler Adams, who had 4 starts. And in my mind, he continues to show why he's one of the most, if not the most important player on this team. 4 starts. I thought he played tremendously against Australia and Paraguay, especially. And I also think that he is a guy that you have to figure out how to play with and without him. Obviously, his injury history is one thing, but this team is completely different when he is not available, when he's not in the lineup, when he's not on the bench. And I think from a leadership standpoint, he's probably, in my mind, should be the captain moving forward. And he loves owning that responsibility, and I think he even plays better with that armband on his arm. He likes embracing that role, but he also has to continue to remain healthy. That's his number one thing, because he's very, very important for this team. I would love to see how they continue to create more opportunities for him to push forward, but also as the engine of the team, they need to be able to figure out how to put pieces around him so that he can start the connectivity that was missing against Belgium. That the passing, just the resets, again, being out there as a leader, barking out instructions to his team, and just keeping them in the game, his mentality. I think that's where that could rub off on the rest of the team. But I thought Tyler Adams had, all in all, a good World Cup. And we need more of him over the next 4 years, especially during World Cup qualifying. If we get into Gold Cups and things like that, I'm hoping that he's the guy that we see in all these major competitions moving forward, because we need to figure out how to play with him and we need to figure out how to continue to build around him. And that only works if he's in the lineup. So really, really, really happy. Again, one of my favorite players, but I think also arguably the most important player on this team. Gio Reyna is the next guy up. And yeah, he had a start. He had four sub appearances. He had the one beautiful goal to end the game against Paraguay. But the creativity, all in all, wasn't there. It's not like he came in and changed the game anytime he was in the lineup or on the field. And for a guy that's now in his that was a second World Cup, we've been told essentially this is arguably the greatest talent America's ever produced. We need to start seeing that. And it's clear that his lack of consistent minutes on the club level is why his sharpness is down. It doesn't help, at least in my mind, that he was kind of put on a pedestal by Mauricio Pochettino. Again, that's not Gio's fault, but Pochettino basically said, hey, when it comes to the national team, some guys are treated differently, and Gio's one of them. I don't necessarily care what he's not doing on the club level. I care about what he does when he's here. But we didn't see that at the World Cup. We didn't see him really come in and affect the game, change the game, or at least in the case of Belgium, bring us back from the brink. He didn't help with any of that. And sure, that's a lot of pressure to put on the kid, but that's kind of why Pochettino included him on this 26-man roster. He was a guy that can change things. And if you're going to be a game changer, go out and change games. That's what he needs to continue to do. Continue to get consistent minutes, whether that is at his current club, Mönchengladbach, or elsewhere. He needs to figure out how to stay on the field because that's how he gets better. That's how he gets chemistry with his teammates, and that's how he's able to punch into starting lineups and or just super sub roles where he comes on where he has 30 minutes to do damage. It's very simple. If he's not playing on the club level, he does not. He is not the player that we expect him to be. And that showed during this World Cup. And so hopefully he's able to figure out a way to get consistent minutes, especially this coming season, because he's still a valuable player in this player pool. But there are guys who were giving their all for and playing a lot of consistent minutes and getting better and remaining sharp, while he clearly wasn't, in my mind. And so if that creativity is not there, it's probably best to bring on somebody else who has the creativity and again the sharpness to really step in and be able to create, to make things work and make things happen quickly. Weston McKennie is the next guy. He's the only player to start all 5 games. He even had the armband against Turkey. 5 starts. I thought he was dynamic and very, very good against, again, in the first 2 games. It was okay against Turkey, but again, that was a game that didn't really count. And against Bosnia, I thought he was very physical on the ball. I thought he and Tillman were great at kind of connecting with each other. And we'll talk about Malik Tillman in a minute. But I thought Weston had a pretty good World Cup. I don't think it was his best output, but I think and there's always room for improvement with him. But I think the confidence level was there. I thought some of the attributes that we asked for in him were there. And it's clear that that works with the lineup that we trotted out. So really, really overall happy with McKennie and how he did at the World Cup. But there's still a little bit that he can do. And I think over the next 4 years, we hopefully see his game go to even newer heights because I think he's a guy that could be super important for this team. Sebastian Berhalter flipped the script on everybody. There are so many people who did not want him on this team, but I thought he played tremendously in every game that he appeared in. 1 start, 4 substitute role appearances. He had the 1 goal against Turkey. I thought he was great. And I was very happy about how he performed at this World Cup. That's making the most of an opportunity. And I know a lot of people didn't want him because of his last name. A lot of people didn't want him on the team because he plays in Major League Soccer, and I think that's dumb. We'll talk about those people later if we even want to give him air. But man, I thought he came on and made the most of his opportunity to be on this team, get on the field, and cause some ruckus and really create some opportunities. He gets the 1 goal, which was a banger, but I also think he was just active when he was on the field and made it work opposing teams had to figure him out. And because of that, it opened up so many avenues for other guys. So I'm very happy with Sebastian Berhalter and how he played. Tremendous effort by him. Christian Roldan, he's the only outfield player that went unused during this World Cup. He was hurt in the final three matches. That really affected things, but so it's not as difficult to give him any real effective evaluation. But it's just a shame for him that he makes his second World Cup and he's not able to really perform because of the fact that he was hurt, had picked up a knock, and was just not otherwise ready to go at this World Cup. But the question will be, is he going to be somebody who factors into this next cycle? We've counted him out so many times. I'm not going to count him out again. I'm not stupid. So I think you may see more rolled on just from a leadership standpoint moving forward. But the question will be, how can he continue to reinvent himself and create an opportunity for him to remain actively in this player pool on rosters and again have that opportunity to see game time on the field. The last guy of the midfielders is Malik Tillman. And if there is a guy whose stock rose dramatically from this World Cup, it's Malik Tillman. 4 starts, 1 substitute appearance, 2 beautiful free kick goals, one against Bosnia and Herzegovina, the other against Belgium. He scores the lone goal for the United States and gave us a euphoria that lasted for 61 seconds that will never, but it will always live on. I thought Malik Tillman was even outside of those free kick goals, was outstanding. Probably the second best player at this World Cup for the U.S. men's national team. He's a guy that we should be building around in this lineup. He's a guy that was dynamic on offense. He was aggressive on the high press. He was a workhorse. He made great passes. He made key decisions. And I just really loved how he played at this World Cup. There's no question about it. He was one of the best players on this roster, and he's a guy that should be part of the core moving forward. Let's move to the forwards, and we start with the guy who I think had the best World Cup of any of these players, and that's Folarin Balogun. How could you not be thrilled with how Balo played? 4 starts, 3 goals. He even created an own goal that led or created the chance and led to an own goal that benefited the United States. And even despite the red card controversy, we're not going to rehash that here. This man put in shifts every single time he played. It's no wonder that people think that he's Chelsea Clinton, because Monaco was trying to get $50 million for him in the transfer window this summer. And you almost think that might not be enough. That is a gamble that has paid off, because before the World Cup started, everyone was like, $50 million? What? And now you probably have teams who are like, 50 might not get him, because he played that well. He was easily the best star that shined the brightest of all these players at the World Cup. And I'm super happy and thrilled for him for how he played. And he is the 9 that I think should be the starter moving forward. That question, I think, was answered at this World Cup. It's Balo. It's number 20. Next up is Ricardo Pepi, who had the opposite of Balogun. He finally makes the World Cup after getting snubbed in 2022. He has the 1 start. He has 4 sub appearances, but does not score any goals, did not look comfortable on the ball. And there wasn't a lot of opportunities for him to do what he does best, which is kind of be in the box and get clean up rebounds and get kind of poaching kind of goals. The World Cup, all the goalkeepers are good, so there's not a lot of opportunities for that. So he has to figure out how to get on the field and to create goals with his feet. And that was something that it did not look comfortable for him during this World Cup. He's obviously going to be part of this team moving forward, and there's going to be more opportunities for him to score goals. But that's the next step for him, is to try and figure out how to play alongside Balogun, which they tried that against Australia. Didn't quite work out for him. Balo, again, created the own goal that led to the first goal for the United States. But I think Pepe has to figure out how to be a true 9. Back to basket kind of play. He needs to get better at that. Again, he needs to be more comfortable with the ball at his feet. But it wasn't a great World Cup for him, but the future is still bright for him because I think he's a guy that can still factor into the forward core. Brendan Aronson has the one start against Turkey. He played 77 minutes in that match. That's the only appearance he had at this World Cup. Far cry from what he was one of the more important guys in 2022. He needs to figure out how to get past like Gio Reyna to be the guy that comes off and is the creative outlet that they need in the last 30 minutes. A guy who can run an already tired defense ragged. He wasn't able to do that against Turkey because he started, but that's his question moving forward is how can he develop into a super sub role that can kind of fill in any of these spots either in the attacking midfield or on the wings, and he wasn't able to see the field in that regard for this World Cup. But the question will be how can he continue to be that have a work rate that allows him to get onto the field moving forward. Another guy who did not have a great World Cup, and really it's just because he didn't really see the field, is Haji Wright. Haji Wright had two substitute appearances, played just a couple of minutes. He came out at the end of just a couple of matches. And uh, for a guy who fought to be on this team, I'm disappointed that he wasn't utilized more because I thought there was some opportunities for him to get onto the field. But Pochettino didn't see it that way. That he didn't play him, and I'm wondering what's next for Haji Wright. Can can he still continue to be great for Coventry, who's now in the EPL, so he'll get EPL minutes this coming season for them? But can he continue to again modernize himself to the game that Pochettino wants on the field for the men's national team? Can he continue to do that at the club level while banging in goals? I believe in him. I think a lot of fans like him, but we need to see him more on the field, and he just needs those opportunities because I think once he gets those opportunities, he's going to start to break through. Tim Weah was a guy that I'm surprised didn't get as much, get more playing time than he did. He only gets 76 minutes across one start and one substitute appearance. And I think maybe it was a lot to do with Malik Tillman and how he came about, and also because Serginho Dest was deployed in more of a wing role as opposed to a wing back role. But also, Weah can play a bunch of different positions, both in the front and the middle. And dare I say it, at times, if you want to put him at right back, if you really need one, you could do that. But he is a guy that has dynamic qualities to his game that I think needs to be utilized more. But he has to figure out how to bottle that and get a good performance. He didn't play well against Turkey. He admitted that after the game and even apologized for his performance, but he didn't need to apologize for that. In my mind, he just needs to figure out a way to get on the field and get into those spaces where he can be as dynamic as he has been over the last 7, 8 years. That's his goal. And so he can move back into a starting role very quickly, or he can move off of this team based on the emergence of other guys beneath him. But I think Tim Weah is one of the futures of this team. Surely is going to be close to 30 when we get to the next World Cup, but he's entering the prime of his career. I think his game is going to elevate over the next couple of years, and we see a Tim Weah that really factors into the next cycle. We have Alejandro Zendejas. Alex Zendejas only gets 13 minutes in the Turkey match. I thought, again, he was the guy that I wanted on this team. He was the last guy picked for this team, essentially. He gets 13 minutes in this World Cup. Obviously, didn't do as much as we wanted him to. Hopefully, he is happy with his experience, but obviously, he needs to figure out a way to get off of the bubble and figure out how to get consistently international team camps and then consistently on the field, because when he gets time on the field, we've seen him do very good things. But we need him to get off of the bench essentially and into the game. That is going to be his question over the next couple of years. It's hard to do that. Funny enough, it's hard to do that with him at Club America because Pochettino and his group are in Europe. The next coach, maybe, if it's not Pochettino, maybe they have a fascination with Liga MX and how he's playing there and him being the number 10 for the biggest club in North America. But if that's not the case, if being at Club America is not enough to get you on this national team, Zendejas may need to make a move somewhere so that he can get in front of the coaches that are evaluating these players and how they're going to shape the team. That's his goal for the next 4 years is try and get more consistent call-ups so that he has more opportunities to showcase himself to the coaching staff. We've talked about 25 players. We now move to the 26th and final player, and that is Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic obviously is the face of this team. He's the face of U.S. soccer in a way. He's one of the stars of this World Cup. Before the World Cup, he was in numerous commercials. You saw his face on TV all the time. And he was billed as the greatest talent that this country has ever produced. Some people are already calling him the greatest player of all time. And he had a lot of pressure to deliver for the United States. He was a guy that was tasked with the responsibility of leading this team, even though they call him Captain America. They call him Captain America, but he did not have the armband, but he still needed to lead. And Christian Pulisic was the guy that I think had the most regressive World Cup. He's the guy who, entering this World Cup to now, people think less of him than they did before. And that's because his play wasn't great. I know he got hurt against Paraguay, had to be subbed off. He looked good in that first half. Didn't play against Australia, got 30 minutes against Turkey and looked good. And then he got hurt again against Belgium, gets subbed off. And really, I mean, obviously was hampered by that. He, had a microfracture in his leg, but he has to be better. This was a chance for him to leapfrog himself into the conversation of one of the more visible athletes in the United States of America to be able to lead this team at a home World Cup. And he did not do it. And he, at this point, if you're that guy, you have to accept the constructive criticism that you did not play well, that you weren't there, that obviously, sure, he was injured. But when he was on the field, there was nothing about his game after he came back that screamed, oh, yeah, this man right here is the guy that we need to mark. It's clear that other teams started to game plan against him and then said, why are we doing that? He's not going to factor in because other guys have kind of moved forward. And there is this thing where the team plays better at times when he's not in the lineup and when he's not on the field. And I don't know why that is, but he has to get better. He hadn't scored on the national team for 2 years before he scored against Senegal in one of the pre-World Cup friendlies. He had a couple of assists. You're thinking, okay, he's back. But that was it. And once again, his injury history caught up with him. He gets injured. He has to sit out basically a game and a half. He comes back, is very ineffective until he once again gets hurt. And for the guy who is, again, being billed as that dude, one of the greatest players ever in a U.S. men's national team uniform, you have to play like it. And he didn't. And, in all these group chats, we're talking about everyone going after Christian Pulisic. And I'm not trying to pile on to that because he's getting flack from former national team players on both the men's and women's side. I'm not one of those. But in our group chats, amongst our friends, casuals alike, people are asking, yo, what happened? What happened to Pulisic? I thought he was supposed to be the guy. It didn't seem like it. And one of my friends even asked this, are we handcuffed by Christian because of how young he is? Now, he's not that young anymore. He's going to be on the other side of 30 in the 2030 World Cup by the time that comes around. He's entering the prime of his career. And these are the four most important years of his career because they're going to define what his legacy is. Sure, he scored a lot of goals for the national team already at a very young age, but to go 2 years without scoring, to not score in this World Cup, this is going to be an issue. He has to respond to this. And that is going to be what happens what we see over the next, coming months and in the coming years. How does he respond to this? How does he respond to the fact that almost everybody is saying, yo, man, his stock went down from this World Cup? A prime opportunity for him to solidify himself as the face of soccer in the United States, not just the U.S. men's national team, but all of soccer. When he's in commercials with Lionel Messi and other famous players, people, his idea was that people weren't going to look at that and go, somebody's out of place. But right now, you look at those commercials now and you're thinking, why was he put forth as the face of this team when he didn't really do much? Now, sure, it could have been pressure. Again, could have been the injuries and really snake bit him. But you have to be the guy at all times. You have to be willing to accept the criticism when you don't play well. And he didn't. And that's something that he has to figure out and how to correct moving forward. Now, it also is going to mean that over the next 4 years, we should be seeing him at all these major tournaments. Nations League, Gold Cup, if we have Copa America, these World Cup qualifiers. And I'm not saying he should be, staying healthy. I mean, that's a given. And that's not all something he can control. But we can't have him resting. He can't be coddled. He has to be a guy that steps up and says, I know I wasn't good at this World Cup. I can do better. Let me show you. He has to take that responsibility and take that duty and be a guy who really wants to lead his team. If he wants the armband, if he wants to really be, truly be Captain America, he has to earn it. And he hasn't done that, in my mind. So this World Cup wasn't a good one for him, but he's still going to factor in these next 4 years. How much he does is up to him. Because at a certain point, whether it's Pochettino or somebody else, they're going to ask the question, hey, man, if we're playing better without him on the field, then why do we keep putting him on the field? You never want that to be the question. So these next 4 years, I want to see how Christian responds. He's not the first star of the men's national team to undergo criticism, but it's how he responds to it that's going to be a part of his legacy moving forward. So there you have it. All 26 guys from the men's national team. Obviously, some guys we talked about more than others, but we're having these conversations. We're going to continue to have these conversations in our group chats amongst our friends, amongst our colleagues. Other podcasts, I'm sure, have broken down these guys even further than I have. And I love this kind of conversation because these are the conversations we need to be having. Intelligent, nuanced conversations and debates about how these guys played, because at the end, these guys are the ones that are on the field making the magic happen. And if they can't get it done, then the question is who is going to be next to try and move this team forward? Coaches can't play, players can't coach. Everyone's got to do their job for this team to be successful, and they have to do it at a high level consistently. We were great until we weren't. And it's a pain for me that the Belgium game is what sticks out and is what's going to stand out amongst most people. But this is where we are as a program. We know where we need to go. We know we need to figure out how to take our games to the next level. And now it's about going out and doing it and finding the opportunities where these guys live up to the moment and then play at a rate higher than themselves. That's how teams get to the semifinals. That's how teams win World Cups. And we don't have the luxury of having guys who are world-class generational talents. We have some that are in the making, but they have to play like it consistently, and they have to figure out how to reach that final level. And once that happens, and we start consistently beating the top 10 teams in the world, that's when we can start thinking, all right, maybe a semifinal or quarterfinal is in our future. But right now, we're at where we're supposed to be. We're ranked 16th in the world. We finished 12th at the World Cup with a final and a third place game yet to be played. But finishing 12th, like in that round of 16 is where we exited, right where people should have us. But now it's about how do we get into the top 10? How do we get into the final 8? How do we get into the final 4? It's not a systematic approach. When it comes down to it, when those players step on the field against a Belgium, against a Portugal, against the Argentina, against an England, they have to play like they are a top 10 team. And that requires taking their game to a level that we haven't seen yet. That's what happened in 2002. Sure, there was some luck involved in that, but we also elevated our game to something that we had never seen before. And that's how we got to that quarterfinal and within a handball of getting to the semifinal. This time around, these guys have to figure out what that is. And they can't shy away from the pressure. They have to embrace the moment and play bigger than that moment allows them to play, which is a tall ask, but that's why it's the World Cup. And we'll see how they respond in the coming months. When we get back to World Cup qualifying, which is in just a little over a year, these guys will have to get ready to get back to the grind of understanding, hey, when we play teams that we think are lesser than us, we got to beat them. We got to throttle them. We got to show them why we are consistently a top 15 team. And against the top 10 teams, they have to play like they are a top 5 team because that's what beats top 10 teams. And if you're playing a top 5 team, you got to play better than you ever had before. And you got to still have some luck, but you cannot make mistakes. Those are players that do that. It's not a system. It's not a pay to play. It's not pro rel. That is the players on the field doing what needs to be done to get the win. And we didn't do that against Belgium. And hopefully at the next World Cup, we qualify. We get back to that position. Hopefully we're ready then. We're going to continue our conversation later with Mauricio Pochettino and his evaluation. Also talk about just some of the other things out of this World Cup. But that will do it for episode 195 of the USA Soccer Cast. Thank you for listening. Remember, you can find us on Blue Sky, Twitter, and YouTube. Follow us on all those sites at USA Soccer Cast. Subscribe, rate, and review our shows. It helps us get in front of new people, and it's greatly appreciated. Tell your friends about us. Finally, head to linktree.com/USA Soccercast to check out our affiliate links and our stimulus store. We have everything you need to watch a beautiful game and follow your teams, and using those links also helps support the show. We'll talk to you again soon, y'all.